Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mike and Navina here from MasterYourMix.com, and I'm really excited because today my good friends at Universal Audio sent over a brand new microphone to review. It is the Sphere DLX. And if you're not familiar with this mic, it is an emulation mic that emulates about 38 classic microphones. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I'm very skeptical of emulation mics, and I have been for a long time, so I'm very curious to see how well this mic holds up. Now, this microphone is based off of the Townsend Lab L22, and from my understanding, Universal Audio acquired Townsend Labs, so this mic is basically a new version of the L22. They've changed up the software a little bit, and I believe they've modded the mic just slightly, but I'm really curious to check this thing out and put it through the paces and see how well this works. So with that said, let's open this thing up, let's see what it looks like, and more importantly, let's see what it sounds like. All right, so first things first, I love the fact that this comes with a case. For an expensive microphone, you always want to make sure you're protecting it. You don't want to just be in like a mic pouch or something like that. So the fact that this comes in a nice, soft shell case, this is great. And it seems very durable. So that's always a nice thing to have, a nice case. So let's open this up and let's see what's inside the case. All right, so first things first, we've got a couple mounts. Got a nice shock mount. This is always good to have. And it looks like there's a Euro adapter, and there are a couple extra elastics, which is always good to have because sometimes those go missing with shock mounts. There's also a really nice mic clip. This thing seems like it's built of metal, so that's always good to have. Just really sturdy, good quality. That's always good to see. So we've got some instructions on how to install the software here. And then here's the microphone. And this thing feels like it's really well built. It's like made of metal. It's very, very solid. It's heavy. Looks like we got a couple switches on the back. Yeah, this thing is built really, really well. I'm really excited to try this out. All right, so we got that, and let's see what's in the pouch here. Looks like we got our Y cable here because this records in on 2 channels. So with this, looks like we've got a cable for the front and we've got a cable for the rear as well. All right, so that's everything inside the case. Let's check out the software now. So there are 2 different versions of the plugin. There's this one here, which is the regular Sphere mic collection, and this is what you would use if you're trying to emulate a mono microphone. Now, if you want to use the microphone in stereo mode, that's when you would use what they call the Sphere Mic Collection 180. Now, in terms of the features that you're going to find inside of the plugin, basically right here, we've got our mic emulation section. So if we click here, we can find all of the different microphones that they offer here. So we've got large diaphragms. There's a lot of options here to choose from. The hybrid section is full of dynamic microphones and ribbon microphones and shotgun microphones. So lots of options there too. And then there's the custom settings here, which are variations of the Sphere mic on its own. So yeah, we can basically select our mic here. We can select, we can switch between mics this way, or you can go in here and select whichever one you want. Now, from here, we've got a bunch of different controls. We've got, number one, the pattern selection. This is a really cool feature of this plugin, which is that Universal Audio has modeled the traditional microphone as it is, right? So for example, an SM57 here is only available as a cardioid microphone. And you can see that indicated here by the blue light. Now, what's really cool, though, is that they've made emulations as if it was possible to have different pickup patterns. So if we wanted to go to Omni mode, we can emulate what a 57 would sound like in Omni. If we wanted to do a figure 8, we could do that as well. So lots of flexibility to select something that is going to be ideal for the sound in your particular mix. So really cool feature there. I really like that because it definitely adds a lot of extra power to the microphones that this plugin is emulating. Next, we have the filter section here. And this is basically where you're typically going to find high-pass filters. So depending on which filter selection you have, you'll see it rolls off certain frequencies there. Moving on from there, we have the access control. And this basically simulates what it would be like if the source that were in front of the microphone were actually off axis. So, when I'm speaking in front of a mic head on, it sounds a certain way. When I move off to the side, it sounds a certain way. So we can change that up and emulate what it would sound like This is really helpful for things like sibilance. If you have issues with that, you can move it slightly off axis, and that can help those kind of issues. So definitely a handy control for when you need it and when you really want to get very particular with a certain sound. Then we have the proximity section here, and this emulates the proximity effect. Now, if you're not familiar with what the proximity effect is, when you have a microphone that is not in omni mode, as you move closer to the microphone, you're going to get more low end, right? So I'm talking to my microphone now. If I get closer and closer, you're going to hear more low end in my voice. So we can actually emulate that within the plugin. So if we wanted to get a little bit more of that low end bump, we can certainly add it in, or we can remove it as well. So this is handy for, you can think of it kind of like a low end EQ bump. So definitely handy sometimes, especially when you're doing kick drums, that kind of thing. If you want to get a little bit more thump, this can be really, really handy here. Then another really cool feature that this microphone has that I think is very handy, especially when you're recording vocals, is this isosphere section here. Now, basically what this does is when you're recording using a isolation filter, so something such as an Aston Halo or the SE reflection filters, basically something that isolates behind the microphone to kill some of the reverberations of the room. Those filters usually impart a little bit of sound. There's usually a little bit of a reflection going on to them, and that does get into the microphone. So what Universal Audio has done here with this plugin is they've added this isosphere section where you can select the style of filter that you're using, and it will actually compensate for that and remove those frequencies that these filters are known to impart on the sound. So very, very handy if you are using one of these. You basically just select whatever option you want, hit in, and it will automatically compensate for that. So definitely a very cool feature there, especially for when you're doing vocals or anything that has that filter. Then lastly, another very cool feature of this plugin is this dual mode, which basically allows you to create custom mic blends. So you can basically combine things like a Royer 121 with a 57 or something like that. Then we have the option to choose whether we want more of mic 2 or mic 1. But not only that, you still have all the options to change the polar patterns and filters and all that stuff. So you can really kind of create this hybrid microphone that doesn't actually exist in the real world. So it's very, very cool because you can go crazy with this and make all sorts of cool combinations to find the sound that you ultimately want. And the fact that you can use one microphone and essentially simulate what it would sound like with two microphones that are perfectly in phase is very, very cool. And I'll show you how I would use this on guitars in a minute. Now, one last thing to note when it comes to the software is that if you're an owner of a Universal Audio Apollo interface, you actually can commit the sounds right at the source, and you don't need to manipulate it after the fact in the plugin. If you have the console software and an interface, all you need to do is just load it up in console, make sure you have your UAD record mode on, and then from here you can choose whatever emulations you want, and it will actually print that effect into your audio. So definitely something handy there if you're the type of person who likes to commit to sounds and not have to try to figure it out after the fact. So that's what the software looks like. Now let's actually see what the microphone sounds like, and we're going to test it on a variety of different sources, and we're going to try out a whole bunch of different emulations so we can hear what it sounds like before and after the different emulations. All right, so first let's check this out on a kick drum mic, and we're gonna first play through with no emulation on the kick drum, and then we'll get into the software and we'll dive into some of the emulation settings to see how different the mic sounds with the emulation modes. So now let's load in some emulations and let's see what this sounds like. Now, first emulation we're gonna try out here is going to be the DN20, which is an emulation of the Electro Voice RE20. All right, let's try something different. Let's go with a 421 sound. Let's try the DN12A. So some of the differences there are kind of subtle. Some of them have a little bit more low end, like this DN12, which is pretty cool. Now, one really cool feature about the Sphere software is that there's this filter mode. And typically this is going to give you a bit of a high pass filter, but with certain mics, it actually gives you different sounds altogether. So if we go into the mic library here and we hover over some models, it'll give you a little bit of a description about the history of it, and it'll also tell you what some of the settings might do within the software. So here, if I click over the DN12A, it says that the filter settings are designed to complement the mic and can be used to achieve a more modern kick drum sound. So let's try that out. So here's the DN12A with no filters, and then I'm going to cycle through these and we'll see what we get. I like this one. It sounds really nice and really punchy. It's got a good low end to it. Versus off. So definitely sounds really nice there. So yeah, lots of different options here for mics that we could try on a kick drum. All right, now let's hear it in the context of the rest of the drum kit. And I'm gonna cycle through a whole bunch of the different emulations so we can hear how a variety of them sound. So first, let's start off with this DN12A mic. So that gives you quite a selection of different options that you could try on your kick drum. And to be honest, that's not even all of the mics included in this Sphere package here. So lots of options to choose from. Moving on from here, let's hear what the Sphere sounds like when we use it as a mono overhead. So first, let's hear it as a mono overhead with no processing on it at all. All right, so now let's check out a couple different emulations. So first, let's start off with the U47 emulation. So that gives you a variety of options there that you could possibly use as overheads. Personally, I'm a really big fan of this Coles ribbon emulation, especially in the context of the entire mix. So let me show you this, and then I'll show you a couple of my other favorites as well. So let's hear the overhead here with the Coles. And then let me mute it so you can hear really what it's adding. Just pay attention to the snare. All of a sudden you'll notice the snare gets so much fatter and fuller sounding. So here it is with it in, and then I'll take it out. So yeah, those are a couple of my favorite options there. I love how with the 87, it brings out a lot of the attack and punchiness of the snare. And then with the Coles, everything sounds a lot fatter and fuller and meatier, which is a really cool option. And especially if you pair it with a stereo pair of overheads, you can really get that fatness lined up in the center, and it just makes everything feel really nice and solid in the mix. So that is what the Sphere sounds like as a mono overhead. Now let's put the mic into stereo mode and hear it as a stereo overhead. And for this example, I'm going to turn off the stereo pair of overheads, so we're only hearing the Sphere in stereo mode. All right, so let's throw on an emulation now, and with this, we're going to use the Sphere 180 plugin, which allows us to have stereo capabilities. And let's hear what it sounds like with the overheads with the U87, and we'll try a couple of different options as well. Moving on from here, let's mic up a guitar amp and let's see what the Sphere sounds like when we use it on that. So here it is first on the guitar with no processing. So now let's check it out with some of the most common emulations you'll use on electric guitar, starting with a Shure SM57. So definitely lots of great sounding microphones there. Now, one thing that I really love to do is when I'm recording guitars, I like to typically use a SM57 with a Royer 121. And with the dual mode inside of this plugin, we can actually do that and have it perfectly phase accurate. So first thing we're going to do here is we're going to select our 121 here and then our 57. And with the 121, the front of the 121 sounds different than the back of the 121. I typically like using the back of the 121 because it's a little bit brighter. So to do that, I'm going to just switch over the axis control here so we get a little bit of a brighter sound. And then from here, we can find our blend of whether we want more of the 57, the 121, or what our split is going to be here. So let's check this out and let's see what this sounds like. Sounds really nice there. We got a perfect blend. Everything is in phase. I really like that. Now, we could mess around with some other microphones too. Let's say we wanted to, instead of a 121, we wanted to use a Coles or something like that. So definitely a lot of flexibility there in terms of what you can do with the blends inside of this plugin. So now that we've heard what it sounds like on drums and guitars, lastly, let's hear it on vocals. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. So the mic sounds really great on its own, but let's bring in some emulations and let's see what options we have here. And just in advance, I want to apologize for the repetitions you're about to hear. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. All right, so here I am now talking into the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and let's see how this sounds. So that was the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, and I gotta say, I'm really impressed with this microphone. Not only does it sound great on its own without the emulations, but with the emulations, that's where it really shines, and ultimately, that's the reason why you would get a microphone like this. And I would say that if you had to make a list of pros and cons with this microphone, the pros would be that it's definitely a great bang for your buck. I mean, this microphone is not cheap, but you're definitely getting more than enough value with this microphone. You know, the fact that you can get mics like you can get emulations of mics like the U47 and stuff like that, those microphones can be tens of thousands of dollars and almost impossible to find these days. So the fact that you get this in a affordable microphone and that you can run it in stereo so that it's actually emulating two of these microphones, I think that that is a really great bang for your buck. Now that said, there are definitely some emulations in here, especially when it comes to the dynamic microphones, that if you want those microphones, they're going to be significantly cheaper than the price of the DLX, so you're better off just buying those. But if you're the type of person who's looking to build up a great microphone collection of high quality condenser microphones, this mic definitely gives you all of those options for a really good price. Now, another pro is that it's very, very well built. Like, it is built like a tank, and not that you plan on ever dropping a microphone, but I honestly feel like this microphone is built so well that if it were to ever drop, I think you would be fine. Don't quote me on that, I'm not going to test it, but I think that this microphone is very well built, and when I compare it to some other emulation mics that have been built using like plastic mic bodies, I think this mic is going to hold up very, very well. And the other thing I really like about this microphone is that within the software, you have a lot of control. The fact that you can record with the emulations on is one great thing. But then the fact that you can edit those emulations after the fact is another great thing. And then the fact that you can also mess around with the access of the microphones. It can really make up for a lot of poor mic placement and stuff like that. It gives you a lot of flexibility within the software to change the sound after the fact. So I really, really like that. And also the fact that within the software, you can combine different types of microphones. I think that is a really cool feature and definitely offers a lot of flexibility as far as tone blending. So yeah, I'm very, very impressed with this microphone. Now, if I had to come up with a list of cons, honestly, there aren't very many cons that I would have. One con is that for some people, this microphone is not cheap. In the US, it's about $1,500. In Canada, it's about $2,000. So for some people, this microphone is definitely going to be out of your price point. But at the same time, for what you pay, you get a ton of value, like I mentioned earlier. The other con of this microphone would be the fact that it requires 2 inputs on your interface. So depending on the type of interface you have, you might only have 1 or 2 inputs. And so that could be basically all of your inputs there. Or if you're working with this microphone in the context of a bigger recording session, that's still a lot of real estate when you've got maybe an 8-channel interface or something like that. So definitely it's a bit of a bummer, but when you look at the power of this microphone and what you can do within the software, it makes sense why it is that way. But yeah, it's kind of a drag that you have to use 2 channels there. Now, another thing about this microphone is that because it emulates so many different models of microphones, it could potentially be very overwhelming to select the right one for you. Because let's be honest, some of these emulations, the differences between them are very, very subtle. So you could spend a lot of time cycling through different microphones trying to see the perfect microphone. And that could be very overwhelming. And I think personally, I just like to commit to things on the way in. And so it just provides a much faster way of working. But when you have this many options in front of you, you feel tempted to want to try out all of these options to find the right fit. I think with experience with this microphone, you'll learn the different types of mic emulations that work best for your voice or for your instruments. And once you understand that, I think then you'll be able to work really quickly with this microphone. But at least when you first get this microphone, there's a lot of options, and that could definitely be overwhelming. So that's just another thing to consider if you're the type of person who wants to work fast and you don't want to be overwhelmed with a ton of options. And then the last thing that I would say that is a potential con with this is that because it is so well built, because it is made of a very strong mic body, it actually is a little bit heavy. And I found that if you're using this on a boom stand, you need to have a good boom stand, because if you've got the arm out, it could weigh down on that arm and start to make your boom arm drop a little bit. So if you're going to use this, you definitely want to have a good stand for it, because you don't want to ruin this microphone. So there you have it, guys. That is my review of the Universal Audio Sphere DLX. And I gotta say, it has honestly changed my opinion of emulation mics. This thing sounds great, and I think when you look at the list of pros and cons, the cons aren't really that bad to begin with. And the pros far outweigh the cons. And I think for the bang for your buck, this thing sounds incredible, and I think I might need to get one of these. It sounds really good. So yeah, I hope that it's now given you a good idea of what this mic is capable of, what emulation mics are capable of, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. Now, it's one thing to have a great microphone in your mic locker, but it's another to know exactly what to do with it, right? How to properly record, edit, and mix your tracks so that they sound clear, polished, and pro. Now, if you're interested in learning more about how to do that, make sure to visit MasterYourMix.com. That is a website where I help out musicians with creating pro-sounding recordings from their home studios, and I walk you through the process from beginning to end, step by step, so that it eliminates all of the guesswork from your process and you know exactly what steps to take. And on that website, I've got a ton of great resources for you to check out. One is a free download for you. It's called the Ultimate Mixing Blueprint. And in that guide, I walk you through the process of using EQ and compression in your mixes so that you can ultimately get your tracks sounding clear, polished, working well with each other, and get them sounding really pro. So make sure to check that out. It's called the Ultimate Mixing Blueprint. I'll include a link to it in the description below. And that is it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to chat with you in the next one. We'll talk soon.